Good morning, LifeSmarts coaches. My name is Charity Lacey, and I am the Vice President of Communications for the Identity Theft Resource Center. And today we're doing a Train the Trainer on the hands-on privacy workshop. What I am going to do as we go through these slides is really talk to you about how we present this so that you have that in your back pocket. We presented a pared down version of this workshop at Nationals this past April 2019, and it was well received. So as part of our commitment to LifeSmarts, we want to share it with you as well, so that each and every coach can share this with their teams. And a lot of this information will be probably seen as you guys head into competition, whether that's regional or nationals. So without further ado, I'm going to jump in and really talk about the workshop and how we present it. And as we go through the slides, we will definitely talk about, hey, if you have questions, you can always reach back out to us and we can help guide you. So as you prep for giving this presentation, if you have questions, please do reach out to us at communications@idtheftcenter.org, and we will help you help guide you on how to present that information. So with that said, each one of the slides has notes and scripts, so you should be able to handle giving the presentation from that script and making it very specific to your audience of your students. If you have questions on what that looks like for you, you can always give us a call and we can share with you some of our best practices. But as I go through this, I'm going to kind of share with you how I give this presentation to the audiences that we present it to, who are typically teens and college students. So the first slide is really about our mission. This talks about who we are and why we're a subject matter expert on this particular topic. So if you have questions on how to present that, you're more than welcome to give us a call. But we've been in this space for 20 years, and it really allows us to have a pulse on what is happening to victims of fraud, victims of scams, and really that overarching umbrella that we call identity crime. The next slide encourages them to actually download the Identity Theft Help app. It is a part of this workshop. So one of the challenges we do find from students who maybe have parental controls on their phone is that they cannot download this app while you are giving the presentation for whatever reason. The parents have set their parental controls so that they cannot. This is a free app. It is provided free of charge through the Department of Justice. There are no in-app purchases, so that you can assure your students that there is nothing in there that they are going to have to buy or pay for. If they still have challenges with getting that downloaded because of their parental controls, I would encourage you to have them talk with their parents about it. Let them know that this is part of their LifeSmarts module and that it is a free app that's going to help them with their identity and privacy hygiene. And I guarantee the parents will be all for it. We typically do this when we do it with a younger crowd. We let them know in advance to download the app, and if they have challenges with that, to talk with their parents. Sometimes when we have a much younger crowd, middle school, high school freshmen type ages, we encourage the parents to come with them. Not that we can do that with LifeSmarts and in class, but that gives you kind of an idea. You know, parents are very supportive of this particular app. So we talk about what the app does. Some of the things in the app are going to be called on as we go through the scripting, as well as through the process of doing the workshop. We do encourage them to take the quizzes. There are a number of quizzes already loaded in the app. Last year, the quizzes were part of their requirement for the scholarship that we did as a part of our participation in LifeSmarts. So depending on how we structure that this year, they may have to submit their quiz as evidence that they have downloaded the app and are engaging with you in the workshop. So you can take the time to do that as part of the workshop. You can encourage them to do that as homework and screenshot it, their results. We'll leave that up to you in an effort to make sure that you're maximizing your time. The next slide really talks about why this workshop is important, and the script gives you some information about that, really delineates the privacy versus security conversation, but doesn't beat it to death. So we want to make sure that they understand that privacy talks about what they are providing to others versus security, which goes into some of the things that keep them safe and secure. There's a little mix of that in this workshop, but we want to make sure that they understand that there is a delineation between the two components. When we get down to device-centric behavior, we'll talk a little bit more about what that means. This slide really talks about the definition of identity theft and why they as budding consumers need to have an understanding. And the script gives you the 4 types: financial, government, criminal, and medical, as we identify them. Others may identify them differently, but this is what we discuss, and we'll get into more detail around that as we go further into the conversation. If you have questions about how we categorize, we are happy to give you any information that you might need. Additionally, if they have questions about the different types of identity theft, they are welcome to go to idtheftcenter.org, and under the resource or I need help button is our knowledge base, which actually is broken down by type of identity theft. So you can encourage them to do that as well if they have more questions. When we get to this slide, we really talk about the different aspects of PII. PII is an acronym that could be identified in a lot of different ways. Essentially, it boils down to personally identifying information. So it might be personal identifiable information, depends on what expert is referring to it, but PII is a piece of data that actually identifies who you are within a particular set of circumstances. And in this slide, we talk about sensitive versus non-sensitive. We really do kind of try and break that out, because sensitive PII tends to be static PII, things that you cannot change. Things like your social security number, your birth certificate, your driver's license, those are all things that you are not able to get reissued and have new qualifying information about you. And so those are typically identified as sensitive PII. Other things like bank accounts, those types of things are really considered non-sensitive, because if you report fraud, you can have those account numbers changed, or you can close an account and reopen an account. Same with a phone number, a password, login information, all of those things can be updated, whereas your birth certificate, your social security number, driver's license number, it takes a lot in order to do that. So the script kind of goes into a lot of that information. The newest type of sensitive PII that we do talk about in the script is biometric data. So things like fingerprint and facial recognition as well are considered sensitive PII, and we talk a lot about that as well. So if you have any questions about PII, please reach out and give us a ring. So we talked a little bit about the types of identity theft in the opening slide. This is where we really dig into what those are. This script will give you some additional information that you can share with each of the students to give them more of an understanding of what those types of identity theft are. And again, if you have some questions with regards to that, you can always refer the students to our website where we have it broken out, or give us a ring and we would be happy to have that information, give that information to you and share with you how you can best give that student some answers with regards to that. So this slide is really kind of the hallmark of why we talk about this information. And the component of this is really to give them a magnitude of the problem. The one thing that we do highlight with this slide is that this really has to do with reported information, and we are very confident that this is an exceptionally underreported crime. And so if these are the reported numbers, what is the reality of that? That information also, this will be updated as we get more information for you, as well as information that we will share with you further into the presentation about device-centric. And we will provide updated information in the scripting so that you have that as well. This is the method of how people can get access to PII or commit identity crimes. So some of it is pretty obvious. The scripting will kind of walk you through how to explain those things. I think a lot of this is very understandable and relatable for most teens. The ones that might be a little bit of a challenge will center around data breach. And what does that mean to each of those teens? As more and more high schools are being targeted, educational institutions are being targeted for data breach, it does impact your students more than they know. So I think that's an important component too, where we talk about that. This is not just an online thing as well. There are a lot of analog and low tech aspects of how this is it is executed with regards to getting their information. Scams and phishing, we really do talk about what does that mean, and if you need some additional help with kind of explaining what that is, we're happy to give it to you. So these are some of the largest breaches that we have that could have impacted some of your students. We give you the information on what the breach was, on what was taken in the information in the script. Students are welcome to ask questions about other breaches. We're happy to answer those if there is a specific breach. This slide will also potentially get updated as we do the updates twice a year. So privacy, as we talked about a little bit, the difference between privacy versus security, we really want to make sure that we're talking about what the difference is, that there's a control of how much personal information, how much you share. That really is the privacy component versus the security component, which is staying safe and utilizing device securities or platform securities in order to be able to keep yourself as safe as possible when utilizing those platforms or devices. Privacy, really, the onus is on the student or the individual to make sure that they are not providing that information outwardly to the public. I think we try and really delineate with that in this particular slide. What does that mean? And in the subsequent slide, where we talk about privacy, what's the difference between information privacy and online privacy. And so there's a lot of information in the scripting on that you can share with the students. There's how the information is stored and shared and how much information you have to give out, and then also how you are sharing personal information about yourself. online and in person. So this is where we get into privacy settings and policies, and we really do talk about what that means to the student, what the policies are, and how does that really impact the student. That, you know, just checking the box is not going to be enough to protect them. They actually really should understand what those privacy policies mean. And we go into a little bit of information about why that is so important. In this era of GDPR and CCPA, the California Consumer Protection Act, it really is important for them to understand what that means. And many of them are going to fall into COPA, which is the Child Online Privacy Protection Act as well, until they turn 18. So it's important for them to understand all of this information. So with this slide, we really transition into the device specific information. We do want them on their devices as we're going through the next few slides so that they actually are changing their settings. Again, we may run into issues in this particular environment where their parental controls, they cannot update their settings and things like that on the fly. And if that's the case, I would encourage you to talk with the parents or send home some information to the parents about what this particular workshop is going to mean and how it's going to help the parents control the information and the privacy settings on their child's device. You can, again, encourage them to join you if you'd like. That can be very difficult for a parent. It depends on how you want to share the information with those parents where privacy controls are in effect on their child's phone. In this, we talk about account takeovers of devices on the rise, and really what does that mean? So there are a number of different ways that that is interpreted. Your students are savvy and they are device centric already. So I think that there are a lot of ways that we can share that information. That being said, they're digital natives, and a lot of times they don't necessarily think the way that older adults do about keeping certain aspects of their information or their devices safe. So we give you a little bit of information about what that means as we're going through the next few slides. The script is great here talking about malware and other aspects, and then we give you a couple of links about what that actually might look like from a device-centric or a best practice perspective. So in this particular slide, we really get into how to make sure that your device is safe from unintended consequences like a lost phone or a misplaced device, so that they can ensure that their device is at least safe. Many parents will require that they have access to a password or passcode if it's on, but we encourage those teens to share that with their parent or guardian as a practice, but obviously don't share those things with your friends, with other people. And we get into the information about antivirus, phone finder apps, lock screens, and notification centers. A lot of this information is pretty rote as far as, they're going to hear a lot of this regardless of where they're getting the information from. If they have questions with regards to that, some of these things we actually direct them to talk with their service provider. Depending on the service, the phone service, there are additional aspects that are added into a device that they may be able to take advantage of. Some providers actually come with preloaded antivirus software. Parents sometimes set that as well, so that the teen's phone is not compromised. phone finder apps, maybe not as prevalent, or their parent may have it enabled as part of their device plan through their phone provider. So just some things to think about as you're going through these slides. So we talk about using a passcode. On the left side, we will always give you the iPhone. On the right side is Android. Again, we update these twice a year. So when you give the presentation, we are hoping that we've hit the most recent update for iOS and the Android platforms. It may be old information depending on what time of year you're giving this and which version you have. We'd encourage you to make sure that you have the most recent version. The script actually gives you step by step how to direct the students to update their settings to ensure that they're using some sort of passcode. And I would encourage them, as you are going through this slide, to actually get in, if they don't already have it set, and activate that particular feature. If their passcode is enabled by their parental settings, again, there may be some challenges to that, but things to think about as we're going through this. The next one is to set the lock timing on the device. This really allows the student to set how quickly a device will lock. We very strongly encourage that devices are locked from a shorter period of time rather than a longer period of time. We actually encourage 30 seconds to no more than a minute of non-use for the lock because it allows that device to lock sooner should the device fall into the wrong hands. Again, the script has the specifics as to how to do that, which pretty much mirror what is on the screen. The phone finder app, depending on the platform, some platforms have pre-existing phone finder apps. So the iPhone does, Android does not currently. That may change, and as we go through and update these, we would encourage you. The other thing that might be in play here too is if you have multiple smart devices attached to a particular phone, like an Apple Watch or a Samsung Watch, there are device locators on those peripherals, the watches and other iPads and things like that. So we would encourage you to let them know that while they may not have it on the actual device itself, they may have another device that can help them locate that particular device that is lost. Disabling the notification center really is, that's one of the things we encourage because if that information is on the lock screen, then it really is not safe. It is not it's not privacy centric from that perspective, and people can get access to information, whether that is notifications about text messages or banking notifications, or even email notifications with information on the lock screen. So this actually walks them through how to disable that on their lock screen. And each device is represented here. So we talk about devices, and now we move in more to the online and app-based usage. So this slide really, we encourage good identity hygiene from the making sure that your experience within the online environment is safe and secure. So again, going through the script and encouraging them with some of those best practices. You know, it can be very difficult. Sometimes teams do not want to limit their usage on public Wi-Fi because they want to be connected. And many of them actually already have VPNs installed because they're looking at ways at working around the school's Wi-Fi and internet firewalls. So be aware that you may get some feedback on this one that is potentially funny, but also a little bit of like, oh, wow, didn't know that you guys were doing that. So as we transition into mobile apps, we will take some of the more widely used apps and actually dig into the privacy settings for that type of app and or a specific app. I think teens are pretty savvy. There is a script in here for you to kind of have that conversation. You can open it up to a conversation around what we're sharing in the script about mobile applications on their phone. Sometimes we forget that these students are device centric, that they are digital natives, and we don't want to talk down to them in that aspect, but we also need to remind them that because they've lived in this environment for so long, they may not be as secure and privacy centric as they think they're being. Especially when we start talking about fake apps or cloned apps where there's a lot of information that may be shared or pulled down through the metadata from the device about that particular student. So this particular slide really talks again about fake apps and malware and how those things are utilized as a way of gaining access to their, not only their device, but of their personal information, whether that's their contact information, access to other apps that are on their phone, access to device specific information about whether that's geolocation or their device in order to take it over in and of itself. The script is available. If you have questions, again, reach out. We are happy to share that information. So mobile app permissions. In this particular slide, we are talking about mostly where you can download apps from and also how much information an app is actually being able to access. So you actually can go in and see as each individual application what it has access to depending on the platform, and you can revoke those permissions. So we would encourage them to go into their apps and see what actually they have given permission to. Sometimes this is a big aha moment for students because they don't realize, wow, I don't remember downloading that app. Oh, I've given that app a lot of access, permission to get into certain aspects of my device that I didn't think I was giving it. Again, we go back to geolocation and what does that mean as well? You know, that Google could potentially be tracking where you're going on a day-to-day basis if you have not removed that permission, among other things. So this is a great slide to really talk about, you know, just clicking yes, 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 yes could open you up for some privacy and security concerns. And that's where we get into location-based services. There's a script here for you to kind of fall through. It does talk about what does location-based mean. A lot of apps have it as a default that it is turned on, and sometimes that can be a challenge for teens to understand. So as we go through and talking about location-based services, I will again caution you that depending on the parental controls, parents may have a tracking a device tracking or a student tracking parental control on that so that they can actually find their student. But as far as location-based services, this does give them the directions on how to shut those off for most applications. social media. The joy and the bane of most of our existence is, and you know, it really is kind of one of those platforms where I think we trust them by default in this aspect. I think that teens sometimes forget that in the social spaces they have a higher level of vulnerability. So a little bit of information about platforms as we're going through them. There are true and false questions in there. If you are unsure of what that means, we're happy to give you that information. Just a quick aside, pretty much all of those are false. So on Facebook, we actually go into what the privacy settings look like. So we'll walk them through what that looks like from their perspective. So they'll open up their Facebook app. We include some information for you on how to help them manage that, and also talk about advertising. So from that perspective, the script really walks you through how to help them with that. And then the next slide will as well give you some information about how to change the privacy settings within the platform itself. To be fair, if they're doing this from their device, it looks a little bit different than if they are doing it from their computer. We encourage them, once they change their profile settings on the application, on their platform, in this particular case, Facebook, that they do go in and check on a regular basis, because whenever there is an update, whether that's to the app, on the device, or the actual platform itself, those can subsequently be changed with the update. And making sure that they have that information updated is a very good identity hygiene practice. Moving into Instagram, we'll talk about some of the privacy settings. And the script here really talks from a high level about the privacy settings and cross-posting and what is publicly available. In this one, we actually give you the specifics on how to change your account setting to private. We encourage everyone to have a private account, especially minors, so that they are not subject to oversharing information or exploitation. Now, Snapchat. We really do understand that Snapchat can be a challenge. This actually has some video information about how to get to the particular spot so that they can change their settings. So that's a great tutorial tool to get them to what they can and can't see as far as the public is concerned. And the script talks about what the default settings are, what the snap settings are, and then we get into snap map. Just a reminder, snaps don't always mean that they just disappear. The reality is that, and I'm sure you've shared this before, that once it's on the internet, it's on the internet. And potentially that depending on the sharing privileges, snaps can be sent and screenshot. So we do encourage them that they understand that while that may be the marketing tagline around Snapchat, it's not necessarily the actuality. SnapMat also talks about, we go back to geolocation services and how people can utilize the information on their Snap map to actually find information out about where they are, where a person actually is based on their real-time snaps. So great information in the script with regards to that. Digital wallet apps. So we get into each of the 4 most used digital wallet apps. Venmo, Zelle are your real-time peer-to-peer. We talk about a little bit about what each of them has as a default, as well as what the information is that they collect. We really encourage everyone, especially on the digital wallets. You know, we don't have Google Pay or Samsung Pay in here, but they're very similar to the Apple Pay. That the information is readily available if they are not actually utilizing the privacy components of each of those features. The other thing to kind of keep in mind as you go through this is to remind students that just because they can easily transfer money to somebody because they have a Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, Apple Pay, Square Cash, however they're utilizing these peer-to-peers, that doesn't always mean it's safe, one, and two, it doesn't always mean that if there's a mistake, they get them back. So we do talk a little bit about that. We also encourage them to not utilize these services outside of people they don't know. So, you know, sending somebody something because, you know, they're friends with you on Twitch through Venmo is not a great idea. Or if you're buying something on Craigslist or eBay, sending them something via Zelle is not a great idea because you don't know whether or not you're going to get that information. Get that product or service that you're paying for. While most of these rideshare apps are, their terms of service say that minors are not allowed to use them under 18. Hop Skip Drive is the exception to that. Hop Skip Drive is one of the few rideshare apps that is available to teens. We do know that Uber and Lyft, a lot of teens are using them. Their parents have the accounts and things like that. So we do want to make sure that we're setting realistic expectations about the amount of data that is being collected by these apps. And we walk them through resetting the location access to while using the app. For the rideshare apps, if you select never, your rideshare will never find you. So it does run in the background, and there is information that is collected. So if you click while using the app, it's only while the app is open and running on your device. If you soft close that, like you just click it down and you don't actually close the app itself, it's still utilizing that information and collecting it. So messenger apps. And this is where we get into these pop up on a real regular basis. So this could be Facebook Messenger, it could be WhatsApp, it could be GroupMe or Discord, it could be some new messenger app that has popped up in the last 3 to 6 months that we haven't gotten a lot of information about. It could also be like iMessage and the new Google variant, which we haven't gotten a lot of information on. So this particular privacy setting is for WhatsApp. And so it allows you to go in and see, check off who can see your information. We encourage that it's only your contacts. And then read receipts are another component that we really encourage them to turn off unless their parents require it. That really becomes the, oh, they left me on red and didn't respond, and that there are some challenges that come from that from a social perspective. But it also provides information back and forth. So there's great information in the script here for you. If you have questions about that, or there's a messenger app you'd like us to update in our next round, please send that information over to us and we'll make sure that it gets put into this slide. So this is a hard conversation, and as a mother of teens at one point, I was floored to find out that my teen had Tinder. And it's becoming much more of a practice for teens to get on dating apps. We really do want to encourage them to not, but we also are aware that they are utilizing them in order to meet other people. So from that perspective, please understand that the terms of service require that the person utilizing the app be over the age of 18. And that actually doesn't seem to phase a lot of our student folks that we know are utilizing these apps. The information also is very geo-targeted in some of these, and depending on how that information is being utilized, if the location services are on, people can find you within a couple of feet. You could be in a store right next door, and that can be unsettling. So utilizing those location service aspects of the dating apps can be a challenge. And while that's the kind of the whole impetus behind the app is to find someone near you, it can also lead to some security and privacy issues. The other thing is that some of this information can be transmitted to other apps, and a lot of the apps are now incorporating social media into those, and we want to encourage students to disconnect a lot of the social sharing functions and app integrations if they don't want all of that information being shared with people that they really don't know. Some integrations include having your Instagram feed in your profile. We really would encourage them to disconnect those types of cross-sharing aspects in dating apps, besides the fact that we would just encourage them to not be on them. So music and video, understanding that SoundCloud and Twitch are highly active places for social engagement for teens these days. We really do encourage them to make sure that they are being privacy centric. This happens to be a screenshot of Twitch, where they can block whispers from people that they don't know, as well as block other aspects, receiving gifts, and what their gift count is. Giving access to that information really opens teens up for some privacy issues as well as security issues. SoundCloud can take over some aspects of other platforms, and so making sure that when you are going through the script, you really emphasize those integrations into other platforms can potentially open them up for privacy concerns. Other social media apps, we get into a little bit, TikTok, Whisper, and Visco, depending on your target demographic within your team. Some of them may be utilizing these, some of them may not. You may hear giggles and whispers as you are getting to this slide. We hear it all the time, but the important information here is that if you're utilizing these particular platforms, do them safely. Some of these platforms are sharing information and collecting information, even if you think that they are not. So if there are other social media apps you think that we should be talking about and sharing, I would invite you to send those over, and we will do our due diligence to try and help you get the updated information into the next iteration of the workshop. I believe that this happens to be a TikTok privacy and safety. Again, encouraging all of our students to utilize private accounts as much as possible. I know that goes against the grain of wanting to be found and engage with other people on the platform, but from a safety and security perspective, it's really a best practice. So social media tips, we really do get into the information about utilizing authentication, using Facebook or Google to log into things, and really trying to help the teens understand that they are actually in control of what information is being shared. Default does not mean that it is in your best interest. So we talk a lot about that in the script. And then we, unfortunately have to pound home that we have to think when we're engaging online and really understand who and what potentially the impacts are to our behavior as we engage in these social media platforms and other platforms. So common sense, all of those things that we are already hammering home are reiterated. And the last couple of slides talk about how to connect with the ITRC. If they have questions, they can always reach out to us directly. If they would like to connect with us on our social media platforms, the updated social media platforms will be in your next round of slides so that we can engage with your students online and in the social sphere. And then you can also take questions. And if you have questions that you get that you don't seem to have the answers for within the deck, you can always write them down and email them to us. So if you have any questions after going through this Train the Trainer, I would encourage you to reach out to either me directly at clacey@idtheftcenter.org, and that's CLACEY, or communications with an S at idtheftcenter.org. Our communications team is really the boots on the ground to get this presentation updated for you each semester. So they have the ability to really take those questions and get the answers for you as quickly as possible. As we go through, you should be hearing from us over the course of the year about updates, as well as about the scholarship opportunities. And we look forward to working with all of you LifeSmart coaches as you go through this presentation and workshop with your students. And we look forward to seeing you guys at Nationals each and every year. So feel free to come by and give us your feedback. Again, any questions, feel free to reach out. We enjoy being able to really understand and provide the best possible experience for your students.